Plato and Aristotle, The Danger of Democracy, B1 level listening text. Introduction, The Greek Square. Welcome to this audio story. Today, we are going to travel to ancient Athens, Greece, about 2,400 years ago. Imagine walking into a busy marketplace. You see men discussing politics, voting on laws, and choosing leaders. This was the birthplace of democracy. Today, most people think democracy is the best and fairest way to rule a country. But the two greatest philosophers in history, Plato and Aristotle, did not agree. They looked at democracy and saw a major danger. This is a story of why they feared the power of the crowd. Part 1. Plato and the Death of Socrates. To understand Plato's anger towards democracy, we must look at his teacher, Socrates. Socrates was a wise man who walked the streets of Athens, asking people difficult questions about justice, truth, and virtue. He wanted people to think for themselves. However, the democratic leaders of Athens did not like Socrates. They felt threatened by his ideas. In 399 BC, the democracy put Socrates on trial. A jury of 501 ordinary citizens, who had no training in law or philosophy, voted on his fate. By a simple majority vote, they sentenced Socrates to death by poison. Plato was completely heartbroken. He looked at the democracy and thought, a system where an uneducated crowd can kill the wisest man in the city is a broken system. This tragedy shaped Plato's entire political philosophy. He spent the rest of his life writing about why democracy is unstable and dangerous. Part 2. The Ship of Fools. In his famous book, The Republic, Plato explained his problem with democracy using a brilliant metaphor, the ship of fools. Imagine a large ship out at sea. The owner of the ship is big and strong, but he is a bit deaf, has poor eyesight, and knows nothing about navigation. The crew members are the politicians. They are fighting each other to control the ship. None of them has ever studied navigation, and they claim that navigation cannot be taught. To get control of the ship, the crew members use clever words, wine, and gift to trick the owner. Once they control the ship, they drink, feast, and sail randomly, completely ignoring the stars and the wind. Meanwhile, there's a true navigator on the ship. He studies the seasons, the wind, and the stars to know the correct path. But the crew laughs at him and calls him a useless stargazer. Plato said that the ship is the state, the owner is the ordinary citizens, and the crew members are democratic politicians. In a democracy, leaders are chosen not because they are wise or know how to run a country, but because they are good at winning popularity contests. Part 3. From Democracy to Tyranny. Plato also believed that democracy naturally leads to something much worse, tyranny. In a democracy, freedom is the ultimate goal. Everyone can do whatever they want. But Plato argued that too much freedom creates chaos. Respect disappears. Children no longer respect their parents, and students no longer respect their teachers. When the society becomes completely chaotic, a clever and dangerous speaker arrives. This person is a demagogue, a leader who tells a crowd exactly what they want to hear. He flatters the people, feeds their anger, and promises to solve all their problems. The uneducated crowd loves him and gives him absolute power. Once he gets that power, he becomes a tyrant, a brutal dictator who destroys everyone's freedom. For Plato, democracy is just a dangerous bridge that leads straight to dictatorship. Part 4. Aristotle's Practical View. Now, let's look at Aristotle, who was Plato's star student. Aristotle agreed with his teacher that democracy had serious flaws, but he looked at the problem from a more practical perspective. Aristotle studied the constitutions of over 150 different Greek cities. He wanted to see what actually worked in the real world. He concluded that there are 3 good types of government, but each one has a dark, corrupted twin. Monarchy, ruled by one good king, can turn into tyranny, ruled by one bad dictator. Aristocracy, ruled by a few wise leaders, can turn into oligarchy, ruled by a few rich, selfish families. Polity, ruled by many responsible citizens, can turn into democracy, ruled by the poor, angry mob. Aristotle defined democracy as mob rule. He feared that in a pure democracy, the poor majority would simply use their votes to steal money and property from the rich minority. He believed that a government should care about the common good of everyone, not just the desires of the loudest crowd. Part 5. The Power of Education and the Middle Class. So, what was the solution? Aristotle did not want a country ruled by perfect philosopher kings like Plato did. Aristotle was a realist. He believed the safest government was a mix of aristocracy and democracy, which he called polity. For this system to work, Aristotle said a country needed two things. First, education. Voting is a skill, not a random right. Just like you wouldn't let a random passenger fly an airplane without training, you shouldn't let a citizen vote without education. Citizens must understand justice and law. Second, a strong middle class. Aristotle argued that the rich only care about keeping their power, and the poor are often desperate and angry. A strong middle class creates balance. They are not too rich to be arrogant, and they are not too poor to be desperate. They are reasonable, stable, and protect the country from extreme changes. Conclusion: a warning for the modern world. Plato and Aristotle did not hate freedom. They loved stability, justice, and wisdom. They warned us that democracy without education, without self-control, and without a strong middle class is an empty shell. It is a system that can easily be manipulated by charismatic leaders who use lies and emotion instead of logic. When we look at our modern world today, their warnings are still incredibly relevant. Democracy is a precious gift, but as the great Greek philosophers taught us, it can only survive if the citizens who vote are as educated and wise as the leaders they choose.